Welcome to your lunar eclipse forecast. My name is Adeana. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and in this video, I will be going over the energy for the dynamic full moon total lunar eclipse we are having in Virgo at 23 degrees, March 14th, 2025. I know that this video is late. I have been so sick and going through so much in my personal life. I was in a car accident. I am okay. But having to go through all of that stuff with my car and insurance, that is why this video is late. However, we're still very much in this energy the next 6 months and 2 years. So I still wanted to get this out for all of you because these energies are still quite prevalent and going to be, if you watch my videos, I talk about these eclipses and how there's events or situations or new energy coming in that really is a 2 year story or 18-month story while we have the nodes transiting these areas of our life. So I still want to talk about the current energies and what is being brought up with this lunar eclipse because we're still very much in it and still dealing with the triggers of the lunar eclipse. So I would love to hear all your eclipse stories in the comments below. I know all the astrologers that I watch on YouTube and on other platforms have been going through it. And just everybody in general is going through something, whether it is affecting your health or affecting, it's almost like we are all going through a purge. And I kind of talked about this in my lunar nodes forecast where I talked about the lunar nodes transiting each sign. I will connect it up here in this video if you haven't checked it out. But this is where I've talked a lot about the south node being in Virgo and the north node being in Pisces, where we are having to let go of control. We are having to let go of fear and analyzing everything, trying to figure everything out. And the areas of our life where we are not doing that, the universe is literally throwing us into. I talked about how we will have no other choice but to let go of control, let go of needing to figure everything out, surrender and trust the universe. And I said by the time we leave March, we are going to know what that looks like for us. And I know in my own personal life, over the last couple of weeks, I definitely have. And I feel like even my physical body is purging out. I know I kind of go through this every spring, but this year, probably because I am a Virgo rising and this eclipse was literally in my first house. So maybe that's why. But yeah, I just feel a cleanse going on physically, spiritually, emotionally. I would love to hear your eclipse stories though in the comments down below, but it's been quite intense. And the universe is showing us, look, where you are not letting go of control, where you're holding on too tight to something that is not in alignment with your higher purpose, your life purpose, your highest timeline, you are going to be forced to literally let that go and trust, and you have to surrender. And that is this North Node in Pisces energy. So let's get into the chart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you align with my energy and enjoy my content. I will be going over Canada's chart and also getting into all 12 rising signs. I will have timestamps listed below so you can skip ahead, but I do recommend watching at least the portion where I go over this chart because I'm going to touch on a lot of energies and it'll bring more context to the all signs portion. So, let's just first start by going over the lunar eclipse, Virgo, 23 degrees. The ruler of Virgo is Mercury. And at the time of this eclipse, Mercury was at a standstill. Mercury is now retrograde. So we are in a Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde. Keep that in mind because whatever themes and topics you've been moving through the last month, but especially the last few weeks with Mercury in pre-shadow, any documents, anything around your mindset, way of thinking, we are revisiting these themes, topics, events, situations. And if anything has happened, like for example, my car accident, I know I'm probably not going to get my car back. I have a rental, but I know I'm probably not going to get my car back until at least Mercury stations and probably even the Venus station, which I said about a month. So yeah, I'm thinking my car is probably going to be gone about a month just because of these Mercury retrogrades. And I talked to the guy from the rental place and the lady I spoke to where my car is at the shop. And I'm like, are you guys getting a lot of car accidents? Because Mercury rules vehicles. And, with the Mercury station around the same time of this lunar eclipse, I would not be surprised. And she said, yeah, we really are. So these things, this is why I'm like, I don't know how people don't believe in astrology. It's just sometimes so crazy accurate. But we had Mercury at 9 degrees here. And so, again, anything that has shown up around contracts, agreements, this can have to do with your career, just your personal life, just anything kind of in your life in general that has to do with those mercurial topics. You can be revisiting that, of course, reassessing, reevaluating, and I would not I wouldn't hope for things to kind of clear until Mercury state at least stations direct, which Mercury is going to station direct April 7th. Mercury is stationing retrograde at this 9 degrees of Aries and will retrograde back to 26 degrees of Pisces. And if you watched my monthly horoscopes, which if you haven't, check them out. I talk about how literally on the day of me recording this on Monday, the 17th of March, we have the sun forming a conjunction to that north node at 27 degrees. And the north node has been at this 27th degree point for a while, over a month. And we have had a Venus conjunction here. We've had a Neptune conjunction. Now, today, we're going to have a Sun conjunction. So, today, it is so important. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. By the way, happy St. Patrick's Day. Pay attention to what is showing up for you. Pay attention to what is coming in. There can be really beautiful support and positive energy, insight, clarity, understanding, even maybe important spiritual intuitive downloads because it's in that Pisces energy. But there's something coming in today to help you through whatever you've been navigating that may have been quite challenging, that you've been struggling with over the last month or so. With that north node at 27 degrees, but then all those conjunctions too, right? And because the nodes primarily work with the sun and the moon, this is really important. This is really dynamic and I think going to be, I think we even need to look collectively and on the world stage, kind of what goes on today, what is being shown, because I think it's going to be quite important. Now, also at the time of this, oh, I want to touch on the new moon first. So, if you watch my videos, you know that when we have a full moon and how I work with the moons is that the full moon is usually a culmination or manifestation point of the time of the new moon in that same sign. So we had the new moon in Virgo, September 2nd, 2024. That was at 11 degrees. And so if you think back to what was being shown, what was going on, that would have been like a precursor lunation because the nodes were not yet in Virgo and Pisces, but 6 months later, the nodes would have been, and it would have almost been, it's the previous lunation to the eclipse in that sign. You may have been shown what what is going on. And actually, as I am saying this, the car that I was just in an accident with, I actually bought that week of September 2nd with that new moon. And then 6 months later, that's really interesting. With the lunar eclipse in Virgo, I was in a accident. So I know I'm receiving karma for something and I'm trying to kind of figure out how, what that looks like for us or for me. But yeah, we are because of the Saturn energy and all this Pisces energy, we're literally everybody's like receiving their karma and you are getting what you have been putting out in some way, shape, or form in different elements of your life. Maybe I haven't been taking good care of my car. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how, but yeah, think back to your own, your personal life and how this kind of shows up for you and aligns for you because we really are in a lot of karmic energy and especially with these eclipses. And this energy was actually initiated with the Pisces new moon we had a couple weeks ago which I kind of talked about, because even though that lunation was not an eclipse, it was still quite powerful. And because we have the North Node in Pisces, it still kind of was initiating this eclipse intense, powerful energy. So yeah, kind of even there kind of been things showing up around that lunation, showing you how this energy, and we're in the middle of eclipse season. Like we have another eclipse next week. We have our yeah, next week, the end of next week on the 29th, we have our final eclipse in Aries, and I will be posting a forecast for that as well. And the thing is with this eclipse, because Mars is, yes, finally direct, finally slowly starting to move forward, but Mars is still in Cancer, which Mars does not do the greatest in Cancer. Mars was also forming a trine to the sun at the time of this eclipse. So Mars being in Cancer and even this Mars retrograding Cancer, I've looked at, and even Mars and Uranus have been doing an interesting dance throughout the last couple months, which has really shaken up emotional foundations within yourself and your world. And there may have been, this eclipse can trigger some stability, some structure to develop in this area when it has to do with your emotional foundations and how you approach your emotions, express your emotions, emotionally respond, emotionally react. That's all being reprogrammed at this time with this Mars energy in Cancer. So yeah, remember that as well too. And that was also quite powerful with this eclipse. Now, one more thing I want to mention about that new moon in Virgo that we had at 11 degrees. Mercury was in Leo at 23 degrees. Forming a trine to Chiron, which could have shown that there may have been a really powerful healing element the last 6 months when it has to do with your self love, self worth, and your mindset around that, especially around how you, it's almost like your courage, your self confidence, how you approach that, how you exude that, how you express that out in the world. There may have been some changes and shifts around that the last 6 months. We also had Venus forming a conjunction to the South Node in Libra, which may have triggered a lot of changes around relationships, self love, self worth, self acceptance, and creating things, situations, and experience to happen so that we can develop balance and harmony in these areas of life. So think back the last 6 months, how does that kind of align with you? And then of course, like money and finances, like possibly where you have had, and I talked about this the last couple months too, where you've had maybe certain mindsets, beliefs that have prevented you from maybe earning the amount of money you want, or being able to align with that area of your life. I'm trying to figure out the word. It's Mercury retrograde, so I'm not going to be able to speak. I'm trying to figure out the proper words. Where you can have certain beliefs. I talked about this in the monthly horoscope. You can have certain beliefs like, oh, money is the root of all evil, or whatever. Those are beliefs, subconscious beliefs that block you from aligning with earning a certain amount of money or earning money or trying to manifest that into your life. And you may have become aware of that over the last 6 months with this energy. And even right now, it could have been activated and triggered where you are becoming aware of certain possible beliefs that you developed through childhood. Again, that's that Mercury and Cancer energy, childhood, right? Or even past life because of the Pisces energy that has prevented you from aligning with your highest purpose as far as earning potential. So, again, take what resonates, leave the rest behind. Now, if we get into this this energy here, I want to touch on the Uranus, because Uranus, again, being in Taurus, forming a sextile to the sun, is again bringing in disruption, change, and breakthroughs when it has to do with security, stability, and this can be emotionally, financially, even when it has to do with your own personal values and how you approach certain aspects with yourself, with others. This can have to do with self-care because Taurus even rules self-care. If you're not taking care of yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, things are going to come up like feeling sick, getting sick. A lot of people are getting sick right now because we're going through a purge where it's like the universe is really kind of throwing everything up right now. And whatever you are doing, literally, whatever you're doing that's not in alignment with your highest timeline, you're going to have to pay the consequences. It's that karma, it's that Saturn and Pisces energy, and we're all going through it in our own way, whether we're getting sick because we haven't been taking care of ourselves, we've been doing too much, whether it's because we haven't been doing certain things within our career and we're having to, deal with that aspect, whether it has to do with relationships and approaching relationships maybe with no compassion and love, acceptance, understanding. We're having to deal with that karma right now, and it's all being brought to the surface. And it's that Uranus in Taurus shaking things up. Now, another energy too, like I kind of already mentioned, was the Sun conjunction to Saturn, which again is bringing up, I'm just kind of going through my notes because I don't want to forget anything, bringing up that karmic element where you have not been following your highest timeline. Things are being brought to the surface. You're having to address them and you're really having to shift. And what I have started to do is when I'm making a choice, literally anything, I stop and I just think for a second, is this for is this directing me towards my highest good and highest timeline? If it is not, if it is putting me on a past timeline, or if it is some lower vibrational subconscious crap that is coming to the surface, I just let it go and surrender, especially after this car accident. I'm like, okay, I really need to start doing this because this is the universe saying like, hello, come on, get on board. So yes, it's just as you go about your day, just before you make some decision or act, or speak or whatever, before you even respond or react, just, think, um, for is this in alignment with my highest timeline, and how does this kind of affect everyone involved? Always remember, like when something is happening in your life, like you're bringing that in, what you put out is coming back at you. And so always like keep that in mind no matter how it is. Like if you're going through shit in your life, you have to stop and think like, okay, what am I doing in my environment that can possibly be bringing this into my life? At least that's how I live. So when shit kind of happens to me, I'm like, okay, I don't blame anybody else but myself. And I'm like, hey, what have I done to bring this in? Like, universe, what's going on here? What is this karma for? Now, also with this Mars here at 18 degrees of Cancer, we have this square Chiron, which can again, because Chiron was kind of influenced by the new moon in Virgo, this can be a tension period or like a crisis period, and where it may not necessarily be anything new showing up around healing past trauma, past events. There can be a new approach around what you've been kind of working with when it has to do with your healing journey developed here. But again, it's like a crisis point. It's like something can be shown at this time, triggering old trauma, old wounds, old vulnerabilities, and you are developing a new approach around it. And that's what this Mars in Cancer square Chiron can really trigger at this time too. So if anything is being brought to the surface around, old hurts or, whatever the case is that you are moving through, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in, childhood trauma, however that looks like for you, because Mars is in Cancer, so it really can stem from, even if it's trauma you're going through in your current relationships, think back to what childhood trauma do you have? How is that playing out in your current relationships? And I'm saying that because that Mars energy in Cancer. So, where this is not necessarily a new event or experience or situation you're navigating around healing, this is something you've been moving through for years, possibly decades. And this energy is being activated and triggered and brought to the surface so that you can heal it on a really deep level and almost let it go and clear it for good. um and which can, stem how you approach relationships because it's in that Aries Libra axis. Aries is opposite Libra. Aries has to do with the self. It's how you approach relationships, how you um kind of express your energy. I don't even really want to say like communicate with people, but just how you perceive relationships. That's the word I'm looking for. Now, this Mars energy is because we're still in Mars post shadow. So, even again with the Mars post shadow, like whatever Mars has triggered for you in this Cancer area, we've been in these energies since October 2024. And Mars will be post shadow until Mars reaches 6 degrees of Leo, which is where Mars stationed retrograde. And that will be May 3rd, is when we clear this Mars retrograde energy. So just remember, we have a lot of planets, not a lot of planets retrograde. We have Venus and Mercury retrograde, which can be enough, right? Because Mercury is ruling our communication, our mindset. Venus is ruling, our self-love, self-worth, our relationships, our money and financial aspects of life. So, we're in a lot of intense energy at the moment. So, I mean, really learning how to approach everything with compassion, understanding. And again, before you react or respond or make any decisions, ask yourself, is this for my highest good? Is this in alignment with my highest timeline? Because that's going to be really important over the next 2 years, especially with the nodes in Pisces and Virgo, surrendering, learning to let go of that control, learning to let go of that fear, learning to let go that you don't necessarily have to figure everything out. That's my problem. My brain tries to figure everything out. And if it can't, I can become obsessive, but I'm Virgo rising, so I have Scorpio in the third house. I also have Saturn and the south node in the third house as well. So like my brain can be, quite intense at times and become obsessive about analyzing and figuring something out that it really just drags me down energetically, spiritually, and really is not in alignment with my highest good or highest timeline. And that's what I have to change. And I have certain thoughts and shit come into my head. It's like, okay, let that go, surrender, trust. And this plays out in my relationships. This really is what plays out in my relationships. And what I've figured out over the last week is it does stem from my childhood, from my own childhood with my father and things around that. And I'm having to I'm going to have to let that go because we're in a lot of energy like Saturn and Pisces. Saturn was in this spot 28 years ago. So if you think back 28 years ago, what were you going through? It can stem back to that where you're having to clear that out and let it go and move forward so that you can be more in alignment. Now, one thing about this Mercury Venus energy in Aries is we do have to watch for being too impulsive, which I also think is contributing to a lot of the car accidents, this Mercury in Aries. It's like, because when this happened, I was the only one involved. There was no other car. I was the only one involved. I don't even really know. It's like I looked down for a second, and when I looked up, I hit a curb, but so bad that like my wheel was pushed in. And I said to my husband, like, I know, like, when these things happen, it's only you involved. Like, I know this is karma. I know this has to do with something I'm doing that's not in alignment. I know what it is. I'm not necessarily going to put it out here, but I know what I have. Well, I just did. It's just my shift, how this plays out in my relationship with trust and things like that. Like, I have to let shit go so that I can become more in alignment because that stuff can literally take over my mind, take over my energy, and drag me down so quick that um I'm not I get sick. I get sick and I'm not in alignment with my highest good. I'm not even able to show up like for my business and stuff. So these are things I am learning like everybody else and going through, just because you are some, super spiritual person or astrologer or whatever, we all go through it. You don't get a pass, you're able to prepare or you're able to get an idea of how this shows up for you, but you're never able to just be in the clear of any of this. We all go through it, no matter who you are. If you are a human on this planet, there is karma, there is, yes, experiences. So I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of how this energy really is showing up, this eclipse. Um, because yeah, whatever is kind of being shown now, we will be in these energies for the next 18 months to 2 years with the eclipses. And there's going to be more to this story showing up in the fall when we have our next set of eclipses. Because every time we have an eclipse, there's like new energy experiences or situations to the story that is playing out in this area of life. So just remember that. Now, also during these retrograde periods, do not sign any contracts, agreements, documents. If you can, try and wait till, especially the Mercury retrograde clears, which again is April 7th. Well, that's when Mercury stations direct April 7th. At least wait till then if you have to sign any contracts or agreements, because there can be things that you're missing, details you're missing, or things that you may have to go back on. Yeah, there's can just be things that are unclear, that can cause kind of hassle later on down the road. And then Venus, I did post a Venus retrograde video. Make sure you check that out. I'll link it up here. But Venus will station direct on April 12th. And both these planets are moving back to, Venus is moving back to Pisces 24 degrees, and Mercury's moving back to Pisces 26 degrees. So there's a lot we are rethinking and reevaluating in this area of life, and whatever is being brought up at this time, we're going to be in this for the next month. We're not done. There's a lot of rethinking, reevaluating, maybe trying to figure things out. And what the universe is going to show us is surrender. You have to surrender, let go of control, let go of the need to control. All right, so now let's get into the forecast for Canada. Okay, so Canada is having this total lunar eclipse in the sixth house. And remember, Canada is going through its nodal reversal. If you haven't checked out my Canadian forecast for 2025, make sure you do so. I will link it up here. But Canada is going through its nodal reversal. So this eclipse is definitely triggering change in the areas of service, health, healthcare workers, service and emergency responders. So like nurses, police, doctors, firemen, those areas. Also, services to, but like public services is also in that sixth house as well. So possibly things like, Ontario Works, stuff like that. There can be changes around that. There can be changes to like child benefits, things like that, because of the Uranus too in the second house. So that's even bringing in like this financial element. So when it has to do with like benefits from the government to the people, there can be changes in all areas, even what is the oh my goodness, what is the word I'm looking for? Oh, I can't think of it. Disability, sorry. Even like disability, things like that. There can be changes, or at least the talk of changes, and not necessarily changes like right now, but over the next 2 years, because again, we're in this energy for quite some time. Now, the Venus Mercury retrograde is in the first house and the 12th house. And so remember, Mercury was at a standstill here. Now, Mercury rules that third house and again, the sixth house, which is triggering that, the service workers and all of that. And then the third house is like education, like early childhood education, also local travel, transportation. So, like buses, trains, even vehicles. So, maybe that's why too there was a lot of accidents here where I'm at. Because that's in the third house. Yeah, so the third house is also like how the community kind of comes together, social groups, things like that. And then Venus being kind of retrograde is again, it's like bringing in this financial thing. So there can be a lot of changes with like the banking system. Speaking of that, my local branch has gone like where there's no tellers, and this is something becoming quite common here where I'm at, and I'm in the Toronto area I'm about 45 minutes from Toronto, in Canada, Ontario, Canada. And And this is like, there's no tellers there. So you have to use the bank machine, or you have to set up an appointment, like if you want to open a bank account or like something like that. And I think we can start to see a lot more of that where, in Canada, because of this, there's a lot of changes to like our banking institutions. There can be a lot of changes also too to like investments and how that works and plays out. And then Saturn is the ruler of the 10th house of government, leadership. Saturn forming that conjunction to the sun, like a couple days after this eclipse, which it's already happened at the time of me recording this, but there can be some insight. Now, we do know Mark Carney is kind of the leader for the time being. Um, so we can see a lot. I mean, to be honest, I think there's a lot triggered here around over the next 2 years. I think we're going to start to see the underbelly of Canada, like a lot of things exposed that was going on that maybe Canadians were not aware of. And I think it's all really being activated and stirred up now. And over the next 2 years, we're really going to see a lot that was hidden, I think, through the Trudeau government. I think a lot that was like going on behind the scenes. And even when it has to do with like corruption, because of this kind of 12th house activation and the fact that Canada has, its south node in the 12th house, which you for anyone that knows how these nodes work, like the south node of a birth chart, you're trying to kind of move out of that. And this can be, whatever Canada has hidden in the past, or when it has to do with the hidden aspects of Canada. Um, there's going to need to be a balance there. There's going to need to be a little bit of exposure, and moving towards, really service of the people, taking care of the people. Even I just got like intuitively like greed. um, so even Canada like natally has this like T squared of Venus, which again is finance. So that this has a lot to do with financial corruption, I think, with Canada, and there's going to need to be a lot balanced so that we can have harmony, and that even so the people of Canada can be happy as well. So I think we'll see a lot stirred up now that will play out over the next 2 years. And now we will start to see things come out. Even with like Mars being in Cancer, that fourth house, again, that's working with like kind of the underbelly of Canada, what goes on behind the scenes. And this also has to do with too, like the housing crisis in Canada. Um, this can create some havoc around that, whether it is creating the havoc so we can have positive change, or, whatever the case is. I think we're definitely going to have, even like with the Mars square, like this is really creating. I believe this is showing up in the homeless, like this Mars square to Chiron. It's like because Aries, or the first house, literally represents the people and the general energy of the people of that country. And with the Mars square to Chiron, it's showing like a lot of people are struggling when it has to do with just keeping stability in their lives, because that fourth house rules stability, security, foundations. And the people of Canada are struggling, I think, and that's becoming very known. Um, and quite prevalent with this Mars squared to Chiron and trigger. So I think we might see, even more around that, and whether there's more challenges around that, which sometimes we have to have challenge for there to be change. I don't know why it is that way, but it just seems to work out that way, where we don't realize how bad things are until it's like really in our face. I mean, we do, but maybe the government, I don't know. Maybe we just don't have leaders that give a crap, but um, I don't know. I kind of want Pierre Poilievre to win, so I'm hoping we have an election soon. If any of you know anything about that, comment below. I haven't watched any Canadian news in a couple weeks because I've been sick and just a lot going on. But I will be posting a video on Mark Carney's chart. As you can see, I've just been super busy and trying to just keep up with my stuff here, but I will be posting a video with Mark Carney's chart. I have to look his birthday up and stuff. So I will be posting that because somebody asked me to do that. Um, so yeah, that's really what I see being activated with this eclipse for Canada, is a lot of the underbelly being triggered and a lot of exposure, and there might even be confusion the next month or so because of the retrogrades. There can be a lot around, I mean, I think it could have to do with the tariffs also from the United States. There can be just a lot of confusion around that. Is this going to happen? What's it going to look like? How's it going to affect Canadians? Like, there can be a lot about that too with this Mercury Venus retrograde and all of that. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below though if there's anything that intense that's kind of shown up in Canada because I haven't really been able to check out any news. All right, so now let's get into all 12 rising signs. Aries, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo happening in your sixth house of work, health, and daily routine. And so, with the nodes transiting your sixth house and your 12th house, the south node in your sixth house and the north node in your 12th house, there's something being shown to you at this time that will play out over the next 2 years, 18 months to 2 years with this nodal journey and story. This can have to do with your health, your daily routine, your health habits, maybe realizing that your daily routines are affecting your health in some way, possibly even your work, because your day to day routines at work and the labor that you put into your career, the actual work you do within your career is in that sixth house. And so that can also be triggered and activated at this time where you're having to be shift things up a little bit. There can be things really coming to the surface for all of us at this time, showing us where we are not in alignment, showing us where we can be over analyzing, we can be approaching things with fear, we can be holding on a little bit too tight, and we're having to learn to trust the universe, let go of that fear, let go of the need to control certain areas of our life. And that can all be shown at this time. Now, also have Mercury at a standstill at this point, Mercury and Venus retrograde in your first house. Mercury will be stationing retrograde the next day, which Mercury is retrograde at the time of me recording this video. So there can be a lot that you are rethinking and reevaluating when it has to do with you, your needs, wants, and desires, your self-worth, your self-love, self-confidence, and how you approach relationships. You're having your final eclipse in a week or so. And so there's a lot being brought to the surface for you around what you've been navigating the last 2 years, especially when it has to do with you and your one-on-one connections. There's a lot you're evaluating at this time, and a lot of changes are going to be taking place. And really, this eclipse that we're going to be having in Aries is closing out the story that played out the last 2 years, especially when it had to do with you and your relationships, you and your one on one connections, business partnerships. And so there can be a lot that you are just rethinking and reevaluating at this time. Now, we will still have Venus and Mercury retrograde at the time of the Aries eclipse that we're going to have on the 29th. And Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde back into your 12th house of Pisces. And again, this can be bringing things up around self-undoing, self-sabotaging, escapism, and where you are not spiritually connected. Also, a lot of karmic energy here. So there can be a lot of karmic energy playing out within relationships, whether it's with you or your partner. There's a lot of karmic energy here that's surfacing. There can be a lot being shown that's been hidden. There can be a lot of hidden elements of the relationship being shown. Again, can be play out in business partnerships or any close one-on-one connections. There's a lot being shown at this time. So there's going to be a lot you're navigating, and having to rethink, reevaluate, and align. You're going to have to make changes so that you can become better in alignment with your highest timeline, whether it's with your person, whether you are no longer in alignment with your person and you have to release and let that person go. There's a lot being shown at this time, especially with that Venus retrograde, Venus being the ruler of your seventh house and second house of money and finances. There's a lot you're navigating here around relationships and money and finances. So, and self-love and self-worth, and maybe where you are not personally in alignment and that's playing out within your partnerships. So there's a lot here that you're kind of reevaluating and kind of navigating around relationships. And then with Mars, your chart ruler being in the fourth house, post shadow, there's been a lot about your foundations of life, like your private life, your home life. There's been a lot of instability in that area, possibly. And so there's going to be a lot kind of, I want to say, restructured in that area, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, energetically, physically. There's a lot being developed here. Taurus, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your fifth house of children, creativity, your hobbies, your interests, what you are passionate about, also romance and romantic connections, how you approach romance. Um, so having the South Node in Virgo and the North Node in your 11th house in Pisces, these areas of life are going through a lot of changes over the next 2 years. And there's events, situations, energy coming in at this time with this eclipse, initiating that change. So there can possibly be a lot that you're having to release and let go here, a lot that can be surfacing from the past, a lot that you're having to address or that can be coming to your awareness. This can have to do with maybe hobbies, things that you're passionate about. Maybe you are bringing, some old things back into your life that you once brought you happiness, but you kind of let them go for whatever reason, and now you're starting to introduce them back into your life because, um, you're maybe this all has to do with really putting us in alignment with our highest timeline. And whatever you are currently doing that is not in alignment with your highest timeline is going to become front and center. And we are really having this need to release and let go of the need to control outcomes, the need to just control certain areas of our life and surrender and trust the universe. And that is part of this Virgo Pisces axis. And we are all going through it in our own way. And for you, this can have to do with children. This can have to do with, maybe not doing things that bring you happiness, and bringing those back into your life to put you back on your highest timeline and a path that is in alignment. Now, also with the North Node, and if you watch the first portion of this video, I also linked a couple other videos because I do have a video where I go over the lunar nodes in Virgo and Pisces. So make sure you check that out if you haven't done so. But the 11th house has to do with friends and friendships, social groups that you are connected to, networking, groups and associations. That's that 11th house. And so there can also be a lot triggered here in this area of life at this time. Now, we also have this Venus retrograde in your 12th house, and Mercury is the dispositor, the ruler of this eclipse, also in your 12th house, and literally retrogrades the next day. So there's a lot that you are rethinking and reevaluating when it has to do with 11th house and 12th house, because Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde back to your 11th house. So there can be a lot shown at this time, possibly around self-undoing, self-sabotaging, maybe where you get in your own way, maybe where you are not spiritually in alignment. There's a lot of karmic energy here. So there can be a lot kind of being thrown at you that really is karma. What you put out, you get back. I'm going through it myself, so don't feel any type of way about it. And then also friendships. There could be a lot of karmic friendships coming in, a lot of friendships from the past, and there can also be just a lot of reevaluating, friendships in your life, those people that are not in alignment, also groups and associations that you're connected to that maybe are no longer in alignment as well. Or maybe where there's groups and associations that will put you in alignment because of that North Node in the 11th house. And there can be people coming into your life, introducing you to these groups or connections that will put you on your highest timeline and really your life purpose. Gemini, you have this lunar eclipse in your fourth house of home, family, property, real estate, your private life. And so, this area of life is being lit up with the South Node here in your fourth house in Virgo and the North Node in your 10th house of Pisces. These areas of life are going through, massive changes over the next 2 years. And the 10th house rules your career, your public reputation, what you are known for out in the world. And so we had our new moon in Pisces, which really brought in some energy and really kind of thrown us into this eclipse season and energy. And so we've been in a lot of intense energy for a couple of weeks. There may have been a lot surfacing, a lot of experiences, situations, dynamics that you've had to address. And if you watch my monthly horoscope, I really talk about how by the time we leave March, we really will know how this is showing up for us with these nodes transiting these areas of life and the story that will be playing out. And so there can be, the South Node represents a releasing, a letting something go, or something coming back from the past. And being in your fourth house of home, family, property, real estate, your feelings, foundation, your private life, there can be a lot either being brought back up from the past, brought back up from childhood that you are having to address, that you are having to release and let go, because that South Node represents a letting go. There can be a lot of past traumas coming up at this time, especially when it has to do with childhood that has been playing out in different aspects of your life that can become quite prevalent at this time, and you're having a better understanding of what you need to heal, what you need to let go in order to become more in alignment with your highest purpose and highest timeline. Now, we also have Mercury, the ruler of this lunar eclipse, and your chart ruler at a standstill at this time, getting ready to station retrograde in your 11th house of friends and social groups, social connections. We also have Venus here retrograde. So Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde back into Pisces. They're pretty much retrograding over the exact same degrees. And so there's a lot that you're rethinking and reevaluating in this area of life around career, your public reputation, and friendships, social groups and associations that you are connected to. There can also be possibly some karmic energy around here, around this, whether it's karmic friendships or people coming back from the past, even past lives. There's a lot of karma in the air at this time for all of us. Now, we also had this Uranus sextile kind of showing up with this eclipse like to the sun, and then this trine, or no, yeah, the trine, because the full moon is at 23 degrees, 24 degrees. What is it? 23 degrees. So we also had this trine to the moon too from Uranus, and this is really shaking up for you because you have Taurus in the 12th house of spirituality, self-undoing. This also can rule things, people, places that are hidden, karma. There can be a lot around those themes and topics being shaken up. There can be breakthroughs. There could be spiritual breakthroughs. There could be breakthroughs around how you become aware of how you can self-sabotage, self-undo, get in your own way. So that's really positive for this lunar eclipse, and really that can be triggered where you are having a better understanding of maybe that past childhood trauma has caused you to develop these habits or tendencies where you get in your own way or you self-sabotage or feel like you're not good enough or whatever the case is. You've really become aware of that, and you have some beautiful dynamic breakthroughs with this eclipse. And not necessarily that it's all, said and done and finalized at this time, but this is where you start to become aware of it. And again, it plays out over the next 2 years. Cancer, you have this dynamic lunar eclipse in Virgo in your third house of your mind, mindset, communication, also your siblings, cousins, community, neighbors, the neighborhood, local environment. And so those themes and topics are, front and center at the time of this lunar eclipse. Now, if you haven't checked out my lunar nodes forecast where I talk about the lunar nodes in Virgo and Pisces, make sure you do so. Also, if you didn't check out the first portion of this video where I get into the energy, because it'll bring more context to what I will be discussing. But having the south node in your third house, the south node represents a releasing, a letting something go, or something coming back from the past. And the north node represents something new, a new direction that we're moving into. And this axis being in your third and your ninth house, there could be something that you are wanting to learn, a new direction you're moving into. Like maybe you're wanting to learn astrology, maybe you're going back to school, maybe you're starting to travel. Those are all ninth house themes and topics. There can be a lot shown at this time where you are becoming aware of what's been holding you down so you cannot do those things that truly will put you in alignment, that you will love, and that will raise your vibration, really. Now, you've had Mars transiting your first house, and Mars is connecting to this eclipse and has been, this Mars energy has been quite prevalent at this time. So, Mars, in Cancer generally it's not an easy energy, but what I find this transit has really brought is a lot of emotional breakthroughs, especially when it has to do with childhood trauma or traumas from the past. And so a lot of that can be resurfacing at this time too, where you are becoming aware of certain aspects of yourself that still need to be healed. And again, that's that Mars connection too to Chiron, that still need to be healed because they've been blocking you in some areas of your life. Now, we also are navigating this Venus Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury is the dispositor, the ruler of this lunar eclipse, and Mercury's in your 10th house of career and public reputation. So, those themes and topics and houses that house is also being lit up. There's going to be a lot of rethinking and reevaluating your career, rethinking and reevaluating what you want to be known for, what you want to put out into the world, your public image. And both Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde back into Pisces. So this area, there's a lot of reevaluation going on. And again, whatever you're kind of reevaluating, the themes and topics have already really been shown because usually through the pre-retrograde period is when things are shown to us, events, situations, or experiences, themes, topics that we will be, rethinking and reevaluating. So whatever's kind of shown up for you over the last month, that'll give you an idea of how this looks like for you. And then, that ninth house is, maybe rethinking going back to school, maybe thinking about traveling, all of those themes and topics. Leo, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your second house of money, finances, material possessions, personal values. Now, if you haven't checked out my lunar nodes forecast, make sure you do so. And also make sure you check out the first portion of this video because it'll bring more context to what I will be discussing here. But this total lunar eclipse is really highlighting your money houses. You're going through a lot of changes over the next 2 years when it has to do with your money, your investments, your partner's finances, also intimate connections. You can be developing more intimacy within connections or having more intimate connections coming into your life. This can have to do with debt, possibly getting out of debt. You want to make sure you don't get too far into debt with this North Node in the eighth house. Mercury is the dispositor of this lunar eclipse, and Mercury is in your ninth house at a standstill. Mercury will be retrograding the day after this eclipse. And so there's a lot that we are rethinking and reevaluating in this area of life, both with Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde. The ninth house has to do with higher education, higher knowledge, long distance travel, foreign cultures, your belief systems, philosophy. So there's a lot you're rethinking around this area of life. And even too, with the Mars retrograde, Mars being the ruler of Aries, there's been a lot in this Aries area of our chart that's been going through it. And a week from now, we're going to have our final eclipse in Aries. So even this area of Aries, like the house that Aries resides in, is being lit up, activated, and going through a lot of reassessment. So we want to keep that in mind. Now, Mars being in your 12th house can really be having you become aware of certain areas of your life where you can self-sabotage, get in your own way. Elements that are hidden, people, things, places. That's that 12th house. The 12th house also rules karma, spirituality. So those themes and topics are all front and center at the time of this eclipse and really can be activated and become, front and center. You can really become aware of how you can self-sabotage, whether it's from past traumas, whether it's from childhood trauma, because Cancer really represents childhood, and even like self-care too. Maybe where you are not taking care of yourself spiritually, energetically, emotionally, and even physically, because that Aries energy, a lot can be surfacing, like possibly getting sick. We really are going through this like universal purge in every area of our life, and especially with this Virgo Pisces axis, like I talked about in my previous videos. Virgo energy naturally is this like need to control, fears or overanalyzing, or sometimes this need to control certain aspects of our life, and we're having to let that go. We're having to surrender. And so, whatever area of our lives we hold on to too tight, we overanalyze, we need to control, it's all becoming brought up for you. It can have to do with money, it could have to do with finances, it can have to do with maybe personal values, or, certain whatever, however that looks like for you. It's all being shown at this time, and there really is a need to surrender and trust the universe so that we can navigate this energy with peace, essentially. Virgo, this is your lunar eclipse, and I am also Virgo rising. So, happy birthday, Virgo, I guess for us for Virgo rising, even though it's not like a birthday. Anyways, I've been going through it. How have you been? I've been sick and I got into an accident. So yeah, it's been quite interesting. But we're going through a lot when it has to do with us and our personal relationships. There's a lot of aspects of Virgo, like with the South Node in Virgo, there can be a lot being shown where you are not living in alignment, whether it's spiritually, energetically, emotionally, physically, maybe within your relationships, because it's that axis, the North Node in the seventh house. This is where we have to let go of control. We have to let go of overanalyzing certain areas of our life and surrender. We really do. The universe is showing all of us, not just those who have prevalent energy in Virgo and Pisces, but literally everyone with the nodes in Virgo and Pisces. Whatever areas of our life we tend to overanalyze, we need to control, we hold on too tight, the universe is throwing experiences and situations our way, so we literally have no choice but to surrender, let go, and trust. And for us, I believe it really has to do with us and our one-on-one connections. Sometimes maybe it's really hard to trust people or trust those one-on-one connections. And yeah, where we haven't been living in alignment, that's really being shown to us now. Now, we also are navigating this Mercury Venus retrograde. So, about a day after this eclipse, Mercury stations retrograde in our eighth house of finances, investments, also intimacy, psychological healing, and transformation. And there is a lot that we will be rethinking and reevaluating around money and investments and partners' finances and or other people's finances, other people's resources, also intimacy and psychological healing. And relationships. I mean, because Venus is the ruler of the second house, there could be a lot around finances here that we're having to address, and that we're rethinking. But this can really have to do, and Mercury's our chart ruler too. So there's a lot being shown right now, I think, where we can hold on too tight, where we tend to overanalyze, and maybe even to what we require within relationships. Like one thing I started doing that might help you is, before I make a decision now, before I, really do anything, I think, is this in alignment with my highest timeline and all involved? And if it's not, I don't do it. Because I was in that accident. I really think that's my karma just for, things. Sometimes it's hard for me to let go of past situations, and sometimes they subconsciously play out in my relationships. And I'm really having to become aware of that and let that go. And if this is something that's in alignment with you as well, you know, just think like, are you approaching your one-on-one connections? And again, this doesn't necessarily just have to be really love partnerships, is business partnerships, all of your one-on-one connections. Are you approaching them with compassion, understanding that Pisces energy? If not, there can be things brought to the surface so that you are really becoming aware of where you are not maybe approaching things compassionately with love, acceptance, and yeah, and the need to let go of control, the need to not always have to control certain outcomes, whether it's because of fear or whatever the case is. Just surrendering and trusting is really how we're gonna, get through this energy. Libra, you have this lunar eclipse in your 12th house of people, places, things that are hidden, spirituality, karma, self-undoing, self-sabotaging, escapism. So there's a lot of karmic energy here for you. Now there's a lot of changes going on in this area of life because you have the North Node transiting your sixth house of work, health, and daily routine. So, and in a week, we're having an eclipse in Aries, which is in your seventh house, which the last 2 years you were going through a lot of changes with you and your partnerships. So, the eclipse that we're having a week from now is going to finalize the changes that have taken place over the last 2 years. But we have this Venus retrograde, and also Mercury is the ruler of this lunar eclipse in Aries and retrogrades the day after the eclipse. So we have Mercury and Venus retrograding in Aries, your seventh house, and retrograding back into your sixth house in Pisces. So there's a lot that we're rethinking and reevaluating at this time around relationships and one on one connections, what we require within relationships, self love, self worth, your needs, wants, and desires around relationships. And again, this can even show up with your partner, like maybe your partner's self worth, your partner's confidence, how your partner approaches the relationship and connects to you and communicates. That's all kind of on the table with this energy. And there's a lot you're addressing now. These would have been themes and topics that have been shown the last month or so. So, whatever's kind of shown up the last month, that'll give you an idea of what this retrograde energy looks like. Both Venus and Mercury, like Venus will be retrograde until April 12th, and Mercury will be retrograde until April 7th. So, we have a few more weeks of this, but there's a lot you're rethinking and reevaluating. And again, even that sixth house of work, health, and daily routine, maybe becoming aware. There's going to be new habits around work, health, and daily routine developed over the next 2 years. And this is where things can start to be shown as to like what that is. Um, Maybe, I mean, this for some of you could show up as addictions, like certain addictions that maybe have not been the greatest for your health. That can be shown at this time because it's that south node and north node in the sixth and the 12th. So the north node represents a new direction. It's something new. It's a new journey we're moving into around health and nutrition habits, your day-to-day routines. And then the south node is something you're kind of moving away from or letting go, or even something coming back from the past. Which actually, this just came to me at this time because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. There could be like a relationship coming back from the past, which is very karmic. And I'm sure for some of you that will show up in that way. That can definitely be a thing. There's a lot of karmic energy around relationships actually at this time, now that I look at this. Um, so yeah, just, kind of keep that in mind. However you've been approaching relationships, there's just a lot of karmic energy, yeah, around relationships at the time of this eclipse, and even just now, like the last month, and even a month from now, like we're just in this like really karmic energy around relationships for you and Aries. Um, so, yeah, but this is a time where there can just be a lot surfacing around your health where you're becoming aware of, maybe what things you're doing on a day-to-day basis that's not the greatest for your health, or maybe, depleting your energy in some way, not spiritually in alignment. The universe is currently showing us areas of our life where we can either overanalyze or hold on too tight or have an issue letting go of things that truly are not in alignment. And we're really having to surrender and trust the universe in order to kind of get in alignment and move on to our highest timeline. Scorpio, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your 11th house of friends and friendships, social groups, online connections, networking, groups and associations. It's that 11th house, and you have the south node here. So there could be a lot of friends coming back from the past at this time. We want to remember that with this eclipse, with all eclipses, it's like there's new energy, experiences, and events coming in for the story that is playing out with this nodal eclipse. And this really is a 2 year story because we're just kind of getting into this nodal journey. Now, if you haven't, check out my lunar nodes forecast where I really get into the nodes transiting these areas of your life. But with the south node transiting in the 11th house, the south node usually represents something that we're having to release, let go, or possibly something coming back from the past. The north node represents something new. Remember that the nodes really represent your life purpose and spiritual journey. So the North Node can represent this new direction that is more in alignment and that puts you more in alignment, really, with your highest purpose. And highest timeline. So there can be a lot shown at this time, maybe friendships that are not in alignment that are holding you back in some way. There could be a lot of friendships also from the past showing up at this time. There could be karmic friendships, karmic connections, because even that fifth house rules like romance, romantic connections, and how you approach romantic connections. The fifth house also rules like children, creativity, your hobbies, your interests, what brings you passion. So there's a lot kind of, I'm sure for some of you, you'll become pregnant and that will be like a karmic baby. I'm sure for some of you, it'll show up that way. There can also be a lot around your current children. Like if you already have children, there could be a lot around your children at this time being shown, a lot of new energy around your children. Your kids may be going through a lot of new directions. That can definitely be a thing. But it's whatever is being shown to you. And again, we've been in this energy for some time because we're also moving through this Venus Mercury retrograde. Like Venus stationed retrograde in Aries at 10 degrees and is going to move back into Pisces. Mercury is the dispositor of this eclipse, the ruler of Virgo, and is going to station retrograde the day after this eclipse and really retrograde over those same degree points. So there's a lot that we're rethinking and reevaluating in this area of life. And Venus and Mercury being in your sixth house, this represents your work, the labor you put into your career, your health, your nutrition habits, your day to day routines. So there could be a lot you're rethinking and reevaluating around those themes and topics as well. Sagittarius, you have this lunar eclipse in your 10th house of career and public reputation. So, whatever is being brought to the surface at this time, this Virgo Pisces axis is really showing us areas of our life where we hold on too tight, where we need to control outcomes or whatever the case is, whether it's from fear, subconscious fear, we're all having to surrender certain areas of aspects of ourselves at this time. And the universe is really showing us kind of what that looks like. And if you watched my monthly horoscopes, I really talked about how by the time we leave March, we will all be aware of how this nodal journey is showing up for us. And this really is a 2-year story. So at the time of this eclipse, there's experiences and situations coming in that you're having to address or really showing you kind of what is going on around your career and your public reputation. This is like your private life and your public life. There's something new and a new direction going on around your private life and something you're having to let go of or something coming back from the past around your public life. The North Node being in your fourth house. The fourth house represents home, family, property, real estate, your foundations, and again, your private life, what you do behind the scenes. So there's something new around that. There can be maybe starting to work from home. A situation at work may have arisen at this, shown up at this time, showing you like maybe it's better for you to work from home. I'm sure for some of you it will show up in that way. Now we're also moving through a Mercury and Venus retrograde. We've had Venus retrograde since March. When did Venus retrograde? March 1st. And we'll be retrograde until April 12th. And Venus stationed retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries and is going to move back to Pisces. And then Mercury stations retrograde like the day after this eclipse, which is the Mercury's the ruler and it's going to retrograde pretty much over those same degree points. So there's a lot you're rethinking and reevaluating, possibly around children, possibly around your hobbies, your interests, what brings you happiness, what you find joy in. This is, your house of romance, passion. So there can be a lot you're rethinking and reevaluating around that. And then also, home family. I could see a lot of you thinking about children or a lot showing up with children or even getting pregnant. Like I could see a lot of that because it just shows a lot of change and reevaluation going on around children and home and family. So I'm sure for some of you it'll show up in that way. There could be a lot you're dealing with around children. Um And then also like with the Mercury retrograde, like we want to remember too that with these retrograde energies, like through the pre-shadow period, so whatever's kind of shown up, the last month or so, that gives you an idea of major themes and topics you'll be reassessing and reevaluating. This can also have to do with relationships and one-on-one connections because Mercury rules that seventh house. So there can also be a lot that you're rethinking and reevaluating around relationships. Either way, we're all moving through this really intense karmic energy where the universe is really showing us areas of our life and really delivering us our karma to where we have not been living in alignment. And however that looks like for you, this could have to do with relationships, maybe how you approach relationships or certain relationship trauma can be resurfacing where you're having to address and heal past traumas because they've been, playing out in current relationships or however that looks like for you. This is all about really getting in alignment with your highest timeline and where you what I've started to do is before I make any decisions day to day or throughout my day, I think, does this support my highest timeline? Does this put me on my highest timeline? And if it doesn't, I don't do it anymore because I've also been dealing with karma the last week, and we all have. You don't get to escape it. It doesn't matter if you're an astrologer or whatever. We don't get to escape it. We get to maybe get a heads up, but we never know exactly how it's going to show up or what it's going to be. Um, and we're all human. So we are not always living in alignment. We're not always doing the best thing, right? Like we're human. We're on this planet. We have to just have compassion. And that really is part of that North Node in Pisces energy for all of us, learning to let go of the overanalyzing everything, the need to control, living in fear and surrender, learn to trust, have compassion, understanding, and that's really what's being shown to all of us in certain areas of our life. Capricorn, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your ninth house of higher education, higher knowledge, long distance travel, philosophy, your belief systems. Astrology is also in the ninth house. So you have a lot going on in your third and your ninth house over the next 2 years. And there can be a lot shown at this time, like situations, experiences, really showing you where you're not living in alignment, where you're not following your highest timeline, things you need to release and let go of so that you can do so. And so, because of also the retrograde energy, and Mercury stations retrograde about a day after this eclipse, Mercury and Venus are going to retrograde over this section here in your chart. And I did post a Venus retrograde forecast. You can check that out if you want. But there's going to be a lot of reevaluation and reassessment going on around your fourth house of home, family, property, real estate, feelings, foundation, your private life, and your third house of community, neighbors, your mindset, your communication, siblings, cousins, local travel, your day-to-day travels. That's those third house themes and topics. And because the North Node is in the third house, there's something new. There's a new direction that you're moving into when it has to do with maybe your mindset or even vehicles, community, neighbors, neighborhood, siblings, cousins, over the next 2 years. And there can be something shown, like if you watch my monthly horoscopes, I talked about how by the time we all leave March, there really is, we will all get an idea of how this looks like for us, and what changes are taking place in these areas of life. And this, eclipse being in the ninth house, this can possibly, maybe getting the idea to go back to school or maybe travel or, the South Node really represents an area where we're releasing and letting something go, or something coming back from the past. And so there is something about those themes and topics. And this can also have to do with like belief systems. Maybe belief systems you're no longer in alignment with. That can also be quite front and center at this time. And it could have to do even to around like relationships because this Mars energy has been quite intense the last few months, especially with the Mars retrograde. Now we have Mars station, but Mars is still quite slow, but Mars is starting to move forward. So I would even say too, and this is just coming to me intuitively, like whatever you've been navigating around relationships really since October, things are going to start to piece together now. Because at the time of this eclipse, we did have a beautiful trine to the sun, Saturn. So it's almost like there's really powerful breakthroughs taking place at this time, even with the Uranus in the fifth house of like romance, passion, children, creativity, things that bring you happiness. And Mars and Uranus have been doing like an interesting dance the last few months. And even Uranus was connecting to, this lunar eclipse as well with a trine and a sextile. So I would say there's like a lot being shown here. There's a lot of breakthroughs taking place to truly bring happiness and alignment into your relationships and into what brings you happiness, what makes you happy. Getting back into those things that maybe you've let fall to the wayside due to busy life or whatever the case is. There's a lot being shown at this time that maybe you need to do on a day-to-day basis or day to day. To bring you happiness. And then again, there can be a lot shown too around childhood trauma that has played out within partnerships. That could be really big for you, Capricorn, because of that Mars and Cancer in the seventh house. There could be a lot around, past childhood traumas and hurts showing up where you become aware of how that plays out in your relationships or how that's held you back in relationships. And again, those breakthroughs are taking place so you can build really beautiful, solid foundations emotionally, spiritually, physically. And there's, again, with this retrograde energy too, there can be a lot that you're rethinking and reevaluating around home and family, property, your private life. And yeah, so I would say I would love to hear in the comments below how this is shown up for you. But also to the Chiron, that's also showing us the Chiron connection to like Mars. That's also showing us too that there can be a lot around, and we're all moving through this in our own way around like childhood trauma and how that's shown up in our personal life. Aquarius, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your eighth house of your partner's finances, money coming in from outside resources, taxes, inheritance, psychological healing and transformation. The eighth house can also rule like fears, intimacy, fears around intimacy. And these eclipses that we're having the next year and a half or so, and the nodes transiting the second and eighth house. Like there's a lot of changes going on with these are your money houses. So there's a lot of changes going on with your money, your foundations, your personal values, intimacy around partnerships, psychological healing and transformation. Those themes and topics are all front and center. And there can be something shown at this time where the universe is really showing you possibly where you've not been living in alignment, where you've not been navigating your day-to-day life in alignment and choosing decisions that are aligned with your highest timeline, if that makes sense. Part of this energy we are all going through in our own way with this Virgo Pisces axis is a really letting go of the need to control, letting go of the overanalyzing and learning to trust. Trust the universe, surrender, really surrender. This can have to do with finances. This can have to do with foundations. This can have to do with I mean, we've all been going through a lot of with emotional foundations and spiritual foundations. Like there's been a lot of breakthroughs happening with the connection also to Uranus. Uranus is in your fourth house of home, family, property, real estate, private life. So there's a lot kind of being brought to the surface at this time. There's a lot of breakthroughs taking place. And this is so we can build more solid foundations emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Now, we are also navigating the Mercury Venus retrograde, which Mercury is the dispositor of this lunar eclipse in your third house of your mindset, communication, speaking. This is also siblings, cousins, community, neighbors, local travel, vehicles. So Mercury is going to station retrograde the day after this eclipse, and then Mercury and Venus are going to retrograde in your third and your second house right here. So there's a lot you're rethinking and reevaluating around those third house themes and topics and second house themes and topics. And again, the second house is money, finances, material possessions, personal values. So there's a lot, there's a lot of reassessment here, but just think like when the planets are pre-retrograde, so before the planet station, about a month prior, we get an idea of the themes and topics we'll be reassessing. So whatever's kind of shown up for you the last few weeks to a month, you'll get an idea of what you will be reassessing, reevaluating. Just remember, especially for you, because it's in like third and second house, we don't want to sign any contracts or agreements during a Mercury retrograde. If if possible, wait till after the Mercury station. But there can be a lot shown too around like debts, your partner's finances with this eclipse because it's in that eighth house. There can be a lot shown around psychological healing and transformation, maybe fears around certain elements of that, maybe fears around intimacy within partnerships. Those themes and topics are all front and center at this time. And remember, whatever situations and experiences are showing up now, this is part of the 2 year story playing out. Pisces, you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your seventh house of relationships and one on one connections. So you are going through a lot of changes the next 2 years when it has to do with your needs, wants, desires, how you approach relationships, and what you require from relationships. Now, this South Node transiting in the seventh house can bring people back from the past, can bring back past relationships. There can also be developments around and understandings around, people in your life that are no longer in alignment that will possibly be let go of for you, especially at this time because of all the karmic energy. There's a lot of karmic energy around relationships. There's a lot going on right now where maybe you're really becoming aware of those in your life that are no longer in alignment, that have been holding you back in some way, that have been preventing you from really following your highest timeline. The universe is really showing us right now areas of our life where we've not been living in alignment, where we need to surrender and really start to live in alignment and on our highest timeline. And that's going to look different for all of us. And for you, it really does have to do with you and your one on one connections. It could be business partnerships, it can be romantic connections, all of those one on one close connections. Now, we're also navigating the Mercury Venus retrograde, which Venus stationed retrograde March 1st, and then Mercury is the dispositor of this lunar eclipse and stations retrograde the day after, and is going to retrograde in your second house of money, finances, material possessions, and values into your first house of your physical body. And again, we're also in this energy of like purge. So you may have also felt sick, like physically sick or a cold or have the flu. And that's like your energy being cleared and your body kind of purging toxins. That can also literally be a thing with this. And a lot of people have been getting sick. I was even sick. I'm Virgo rising, so I'm like complete opposite of you. And that's why this forecast is late because I was sick like the last week. And I also had a lot of karmic energy going on too in events. But you may even find too, like you're cleansing a lot, or there's a lot of purge going on with your physical body so that you can energetically be lighter in a sense, which is great because we start a brand new zodiacal year this week with the sun moving into Aries. So we kind of get to start a new year freshly cleansed in a sense. So, I mean, it's not necessarily nice to go through, but it is good to start a new year kind of fresh and cleansed. Now, Uranus is in your third house. Uranus was forming a trine to the moon and a sextile to the sun. So Uranus was creating, breakthroughs around relationships. And there could be a lot of instability at this time, but this really is to create more solid foundations within relationships. So just keep that in mind. And this can have to do with like communication, how you communicate within relationships, maybe your mindset around relationships, your partner's mindset, business partners, the whole kind of mindset communication dynamic when it has to do with you and aligning with partnerships, if that makes sense. There is a lot of breakthroughs taking place, and sometimes breakthroughs can be a little bit challenging, but it really is to put us in alignment and a path that is for our better good and all involved. So just keep that in mind. But at this time, there can be a lot around relationships, your self love and self worth, how you connect within partnerships, your needs, wants, and desires, what you require within partnerships, really learning to develop healthy boundaries, which is something you can struggle with, especially you, Pisces. You can tend to take on everybody's energy, and there can be a lot shown. And even intuitively, I just got like that might be why you're getting sick. If you are, there can be, shown where if you don't establish those healthy boundaries, this energetic depletion is taking place, which really weighs you down and you get ill, you get sick, you don't have a lot of energy. So developing those healthy boundaries is going to be key. And there can be, an event at this time showing you where maybe you're not doing so.